One of the best things I learned at Accenture was I had a good boss that I worked for. She was a couple levels ahead of me, but every once in a while she would get a little too efficient. And what you had to learn is that you have to be effective with people, but not efficient with people. And sometimes it will backfire.
Welcome to the Small Business Safari, where I help guide you to avoid those traps, pitfalls, and dangers that lurk when navigating the wild world of small business ownership. I'll share those gold nuggets of information and invite guests to help accelerate your ascent to that mountaintop of success. It's a jungle out there, and I want to help you traverse through the levels of owning your own business that can get you bogged down and distract you from hitting your own personal and professional goals. So strap in, adventure team, and let's take a ride through the safari and get you to the mountaintop.
Welcome to the mini safari where I talk about episode 2. Got done telling a story about how I went from Accenture to going to SunTrust. I had gone through the ups and downs and evaluating my experiences and coming out with a lot of polished edges that really helped. When looking back on my time at Accenture, it was one of the best times I had in terms of building my skills. Accenture was basically swimming with the sharks. And when you swim with these guys, you definitely have to learn to polish your edges and pick up all the things that you need to figure out to be good and effective. I learned a lot at Accenture. One of the things that I learned a lot about was about that when you work with people in a high performing setting, a diverse team is awesome. And I don't talk about diversity in just in terms of race, religion, creed, anything. I'm talking about just diversity of opinions and thoughts. I went in there as a logical engineer and was working with English majors, psychology majors, history majors. And it wasn't that they were any less than me. They were, in fact, a lot of them were better than me. They just had a different way of thinking. And working with a high-performing team, I found that having a diversity of backgrounds and a diversity of thought processes really came out with a better answer. So when you put together a high-performing team, diversity definitely makes a big difference. One of the best things I learned at Accenture was I had a good boss that I worked for. She was a couple levels ahead of me, but every once in a while she would get a little too efficient. And what you had to learn is that you have to be effective with people, but not efficient with people. And sometimes it will backfire. I was trying to fit into a mold that wasn't exactly me, but I definitely started to find my niche, and I really started to find my flow and my style there. Even though I wasn't on the entrepreneurial bent just yet, I still was thinking about doing it, still wanted to get there, but I really needed to work on a few things. I continued to gain experience and also kept evaluating how I was doing and where I was going. It was really interesting to go from there to SunTrust. When I picked up SunTrust, it was a really interesting time for me because I went from small, high-performing, high-achieving teams to managing 400 people of what, in effect, was a low-performing team. I had a number of people who were second income earners who worked for us. Our reputation was horrible. I had to really go work on a rebranding effort. And branding and working on the rebranding effort that I did not only at SunTrust, but I did when I started my own company, really was founded on what I learned when I was at Accenture. And later on in one of our podcasts, we're going to talk about branding in a big effort because I learned a big thing about that. And the big thing is branding is really a war of attrition. First, you have to find a name that's going to work. Then you now have to go work and get all the website and all the information together and make sure it's not trademarked by anybody else. And then once you have that, you realize that you have an empty vessel and it's just a name, and that name means nothing until you start to build through your culture and through your delivery and through building of your customers, really finding out who your branding is. Similar to the Small Business Safari in my book, From the Zoo to the Wild, I look forward to building a brand that hopefully will give you guys gold nuggets of information around how to be a better entrepreneur from some of the mistakes I've made and some of the things I've learned. So we keep on going and keep on rolling. So after the branding nugget that I just dropped, and we'll, like I said, we'll expand on that a little bit further. I want to talk about rewarding employees because that's something we're going to talk about a lot later on, because employees in the home services space are vital to your success. That's the only way you can scale. One of my early on, I wouldn't say bummers, but was actually interesting. And I talked about it in the podcast. When I was working at Accenture and working my way towards partner, when you made partner at Accenture, you were $1 million guy. And that was the way I was looking at it. And that's the way I was firing for it. And we went public. The $1 million kind of target was gone. But they told us we would get all this stock and we would make all this money. They actually rolled out a calculator. And when you put the numbers in the calculator that they were telling you to put in there, I literally thought I would have anywhere between $2 to $5 million. I can't remember exact numbers, but it was huge. And what I really got was a nice little nest egg, and not anything to sneeze at, but it definitely didn't buy. In my mind, I was going to be buying an island next to Richard Branson in the BVI, but that didn't happen. So what I learned is that when you go to reward people, it's not always about the money. It's about the expectations you set. And you also have to deliver on those expectations, because if I told you I was going to give you $5 and I only gave you $2.50, you're going to be ticked at me. If I told you I was going to give you $10, but I gave you $100, you're going to go, wow, this guy was pretty cool, pretty special. So learning that was pretty big. The last thing that got me, and that was it. I went on to SunTrust. I learned so many lessons about how to lead a big team. I was reading Drucker. I was reading Lencioni, Collins, everything I can get my hands on. I went back and was rereading Covey. How could I get a high-performing team in place and get them going from what was essentially a low-performing team to a high-performing team, even though I was not exactly swimming with the sharks. They were great people. They just didn't have that same style that the consultants had. I kept on growing, and I learned a lot about leading large people and doing the branding effort. And I thought I was having a good time. And then big things happened. And if you listen to episode 2, I'm not going to go into all of it, but I got to a point where I realized I wasn't doing what I love to do anymore. And I had to have somebody tell me, basically, you're just not doing what you love to do. You got to hit the road. And that was it. I went from being highly intoxicated, loving not only the money I was making, but the trappings of life I had. We had gone on a number of good vacations. My kids were in private school. My wife was thinking about quitting her job, and I would have been able to keep going. But I got hit, and I just said that was it. And my gut turned, and it was time to go. Sometimes you might feel like that too. But before you leap, you got to make sure you know what you're running to. Never run away from something, always run to something. And that's what we'll talk about in later episodes. And until then, keep on, keep it on. Go get them, adventure team.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Small Business Safari. Remember, your positive attitude will help you achieve that higher altitude you're looking for in the wild world of small business ownership. And until next time, make it a great day, adventure team.